versus your expectations? What is the best use of your capital versus your expectations? What weapons or technical analysis tools are you going to use? Stochastics, market profile, moving averages? What is your proprietary trading model? Are you using the right technical analysis tools in your market environment? What suits your style and temperament best? What is your exit strategy? What technical analysis tools have you used or developed to determine your target area and your acknowledgement of victory or defeat? Many moons ago, as a young retail broker in the mid-1970s, I had a client that bought 1,000 shares of a stock at 8 1/8. And in a horrible market environment, he was right. This stock just went up and up and up. It was great. It was the neatest thing since sliced bread. Well, when it got into the 40s, I started asking him, when are you going to get out? Well, he didn't know. It was going to go up forever. When it got to 49 and change, I said, you better seriously start thinking about getting out. Well, he hemmed and he hawed, and a few days later he calls, and he placed a limit order at 50 1/8. Can you guess what happened? It never got there. In fact, it actually got to 50 offered, but it never saw 50 1/8 bid. He rode that stock all the way back down to $8 a share and less. No exit strategy. Now, there are some common themes that run throughout the art of war, and I would like you to think about these and how they apply to your own trading plan. Adaptability, flexibility, and versatility. Our global markets are dynamic. They are constantly changing. They're constantly in a state of flux. To be a successful trader, you have to have the ability to adapt and be flexible and find new ways of looking at your markets. If you apply a static model to a dynamic market, sooner or later, you're going to be in trouble. Can anyone think of a giant hedge fund, one of the real brain trusts, that got in major league trouble because they used historic price and spread relationship models? They couldn't or didn't adapt. Okay? Your ability to be flexible and adaptable to an ever-changing market condition will allow you the creativity to seize opportunities when they present themselves. Planning and preparation. You have to know and learn how to do your homework and plan well ahead. If one scenario happens, you're going to do this. If another scenario happens, you're going to do that. Plan ahead. Every month, we get an absolute plethora of economic statistics. How many traders do you know place bets prior to the release of those numbers? Then they're filled with angst, waiting for the release, and then they jump for joy if they're right, or they're filled with woe and sorrow if they're wrong, and they have to scramble to cover. That's not trading. That's gambling. Can you think of a better way to trade? Comparisons. Learn to look at the markets in comparison to other similar or competing markets. Nothing happens in a vacuum. If your strategic appraisal has led you to believe that the Nikkei is headed even higher, what does yen look like? What do JGBs yield? What does 3-month euro yen look like? If Japanese accounts are buying, domestic accounts, the money has to come from somewhere. If international accounts are buying, where is that money going to come from? Method and discipline. Trading is a highly personal business. No two people are the same. Once you have established your plan, your methods, and your risk and your rules, it is imperative that you have the discipline to stick to them. When Sun Tzu was explaining his methods to a ruler, he told this ruler that he could make the court concubines into an army with proper discipline. Well, the ruler found this quite amusing and asked him to demonstrate. Sun Tzu ordered them into a line and told them to stand at attention and then turn around, do an about face. And they laughed and they giggled and they carried on. Sun Tzu drew his sword and promptly beheaded the first one in line. The giggling stopped and they stood at attention. Okay? Good and proper discipline will save you from being financially beheaded. Strategy. Positioning yourself to win. Now, how do you do that? By thinking ahead. Some time ago, I thought that sterling was headed down versus the U.S. dollar. At the time, it was about 162. My target area was 158, and I knew that at 163, I would be wrong. So what did I do? It turns out I was dead wrong. Okay? But I actually made a couple dollars on it. Not a lot, but a little. Okay? Now, how did I do that? Because 163 calls on the futures contracts were cheap, because everybody thought they would set itself, including me, I bought 2 163 calls for every futures contract that I had sold short. As it turns out, sterling rebounded to 165 because of a surprise interest rate intervention by the Bank of England that I had not counted on. Okay? But the point is, I managed my market risk, I managed event risk, I planned ahead, I positioned myself to win.
But you were bailed out.
Pardon?
You were bailed out.
Commitment to victory. Focus and purpose. There are jobs, there are careers, and there are callings. Trading is a calling. It is not something that you can do haphazard or casually. Trading requires a focus and a commitment, much more so than most any other occupations that you can think of. The Art of War tells us that war or military action is of vital importance to the state, and therefore we should study it and understand it. You've heard me mention several times strategic appraisal. In this age of global economies, we are inexorably linked to other markets. If you're going to be successful as a trader, it is vitally important that you appreciate the nature of this global marketplace that we have. That's what makes thinking in strategic terms so vitally important to your success. Understand our economic system from a global perspective. You have to be cognitive of central bank policies, liberal or conservative governments, currency valuations, interest rates, and so forth, and the events that impact them. Think globally. In 1998, Japanese institutions had nearly 40% of their equities in foreign markets. In Canada, pension funds have doubled their foreign equity exposure in just the last 4 years. In continental Europe, 1997, their foreign equity exposure was $165 billion. In 1998, it was $320 billion. 1999 should be even more interesting. Last year, institutional fixed income trading in the world's major markets was well in excess of $40 trillion. currency markets trade $1.5 trillion a day. So think globally and change your perspective. I'm sure that you have heard that old saw that bulls make money and bears make money and pigs get slaughtered. What never ceases to amaze me is the amount of sheep out there. Many traders will blindly follow a market because somebody else says so. Part of your strategic appraisal should include a very pragmatic evaluation of what stage your market is in. The grain markets of 95 and 96 come to mind when I see that. I knew the top had arrived when I got a phone call from the owner of a body shop where I had the paint work done on my midlife crisis. He calls me and he says, I hear soybeans are headed for the teens. They're only $9 a bushel and they're headed for the teens. I can make a ton of money. And I said, no, Steve, let's not do this. Let me tell you what it's about. And I gave him a quick lesson in leverage and why he shouldn't do it. Changes in one market will always precipitate a change in another. Nothing happens in a vacuum, and rarely by accident. There is no such thing as coincidence. If you learn to think in strategic terms first, and in a global context, you can plan well ahead and effectively compete and exploit weak and unprepared opponents. Our job as traders is to position ourselves ahead of investors. Think about the recent rise in the yen and the Nikkei. Why is the Japanese stock market so vitally important? As important as ours is to us, theirs is even more important to them and us. Why? Does anybody know? Anybody? Their banking system. Japanese banks' capital can be computed in terms of the Nikkei. Okay. Now, can you even begin to imagine the global consequences of a banking crisis in Japan? It would be horrendous. Now ask yourself the question, who has a strategic interest in seeing that does not happen? And what would they do about it? Okay. I'm sure you can think of a few answers. Okay. Let's try an example even further out. Does anybody know what they're building in China, amongst other things? Roads. Why would they build roads when scarcely anyone has a car? Because they will. Now, given current circumstances, once that happens, oil consumption is estimated to triple from current levels. Now, if you start thinking 10 to 20 years out,